So we are happy here today for two reasons. One is because we have been working with 51 divisions and some great community police officers to start a television series about community policing. We have produced 5 episodes and we hope to produce many more. And one of the reasons why we asked you today is because to get your feedback both on the channel but also about the issues that we could talk about for future episodes of community policing, about the TV station, but also to find out and gain information about community policing and questions that you might have about community policing that, and community safety that you may have that our panelists can answer. We have some very connected panelists who are going to be here today to, after the viewing, to first of all start off with answering some of the questions that we raised and then open it up for the audience. Does that sound great? All right. So, Meet Your Neighborhood Police was produced in partnership with 51 Division and Regent Park Focus. We want to thank a couple of our sponsors. One is the Law Foundation of Ontario. And David, do you want to say a few words that you're here? Okay. All right. And happens to be in the audience tonight. But the Law Foundation does some great work funding educational programs around community safety and the law and policing. So hands off to David and the work of the Law Foundation. We also want to acknowledge the support from the Ministry of Correctional Services, and they have also been involved with supporting some of the programming that we do related to safety in the Regent Park community. So saying that, I'm going to start off by asking each of you to introduce yourselves and to comment upon your role and involvement in around community safety in Regent Park. I'm going to start off with Barry Thomas, a former manager of TCHC, and then we're here from Bob McDonald, our current manager of Toronto Community Housing for Regent Park.
My name is Barry Thomas. I'm the former operating unit manager in Regent Park from 2010 until December last year. And my involvement with the Regent Park Community Police Unit neighborhood officers was I was around at the inception when we were going through the first really messy, ugly, dirty phases of relocation. And those phases of relocation involved relocating Regent Park residents who had been here for generations. And it involved relocating not people just above the surface, but going into the roots of the community. It was a very, very different kind of community that was very insular, very inward looking, didn't have a trust of the police or any other community for that matter, or anybody who came into Regent Park at that stage. And we also had a police that used to literally live right on Regent Street that had been relocated out and moved to 51 Division. So the environment that I came into really begged for a different kind of discourse. And that's what I was most proud and most privileged to be part of, is to start and see the first iterations of the neighborhood policing with people like Fixton Wah and all those people who were just thrown at it by Inspector Tonoya at the time. So I'm not going to go on a little bit more, but I just wanted to give a context. And I'm very happy that my colleague Bob is here to take over from me, but it's very bittersweet for me to come back and talk about the stuff because I left a lot of blood and soul and tears on the sidewalk here.
Hi, I'm Bob McDonald. I've been the operating unit manager since January, trying to fill the very large shoes or sandals of Barry Thomas. A lot of my job is kind of focusing on the company's, Toronto Community Housing's business issues that have to deal with rent collection and repairs and that sort of thing. When it comes to the community safety aspect, I'm being able to benefit from all the work that has happened in the past between previous managers and the community police and the larger force. So I'm able to benefit from that. I have to respond to all of the tenants' concerns about safety, and that sort of comes forward in a number of ways, whether it has to do with troublesome people on their floor or door security, generally throughout the building, and concern about kind of events that happen that we've all been hearing about lately, violence and antisocial kind of activities. So I'm starting to get a handle on that, and I really owe a lot to the community officers and that community approach, and able to be able to link very quickly and get information about how we can all operate better together.
Right. Prasad?
Thank you. I'm Farzad Gakbi. I'm one of the Regent Park neighborhood officers. I've been in this position for the last almost 5 years now. And I just want to say, after you guys saw the episode here, without your open arms, without your support, with our stakeholders and you, the residents, I wouldn't be sitting here right now. So I want to say thank you. I'm extremely privileged to be sitting here before you. And our role here is simply to serve you guys and also to protect you. And that's what we're going to be doing for as long as we're here.
Marcia?
My name is Mir Chabiga. I'm Farzad's partner. I am actually one of the initial neighborhood officers in Regent Park. When the program started, we didn't really know much about what neighborhood officer program is going to be about. We were not given any instructions, any directions, what to do with it. But we were told, get into the neighborhood and, make the best out of it. So 3 of my colleagues at the time, after a short period of time, they probably found it's not what they were hoping for. And that's how I ended up with Farzad as my partner, and 2 other officers, everybody knows, Melissa and Ed. And for the last 4 years, we've been trying to do our best, to build a better relationship with the community, gain your trust, and make a better neighborhood for everybody.
I'm Sean Major. I'm the acting manager for engagement around revitalization. And some of the work we've been doing has been around creating a crime prevention strategy, an early intervention strategy related to, from a community development lens. But I really want to recognize some of the people who are actually on the committee that has been working very hard to create that, and what we're going to transition into a Regent Park safety network. Barry will know that there's always been a Regent Park safety network. It was his work that created that original safety network, but we want to revive that energy and also bring along the market, the new market folks that we have here. So I want to recognize that in the room with us is people who are part of that committee. We have Marlene here, Ilona, Ines, and Lloyd. So if you guys want to just give a wave, but they're all part of our work that we're trying to do, and it just recognizes that safety is not going to happen just through one group or one person. So hopefully they'll come up and not be shy and talk about some of the work too.
Okay, great. Thank you. So the next question I have is just so people have an understanding of what your work is around community safety. we'd like to hear some concrete examples of some of the initiatives that are happening, some of the work you're doing, some of the activities you're doing. So maybe 2 or 3 examples, quick examples. Maybe we'll start from that end of the table. Sean, you could go start with that.
So like I was talking about, we were working, actually, come on up. I don't want to talk about this.
All right.
You guys know.
I'm Lloyd Pike. I've been living in Regent Park for this July 4th will be 28 years. I've been a part of the safety ever since I've been living in Regent. I'm also visually impaired, so safety is an important part why I got involved, because I think that being engaged with other residents in the place that you live is for all of us to be in a safe community and to help others and to help the young ones that feel scared to go outside of their own apartments. So I got involved because I wanted to see a difference and make a difference in our community, so that working with kids and trying to figure out why they're scared to walk by themselves or to go out or go to school by themselves, and how we as adults can make a difference and try to help them to feel more comfortable going to school and finding ways to work with them to be able to speak out and to get their needs met so that they can continue to grow and be leaders in this community. And one of the things that we are doing as a committee is to work out ways and finding issues that we can help them with and to deal with and to make it safer for them.
Hi everyone, my name is Inez Garcia, resident of the community for 29 years. I've been involved in the safety committee with Barry for a very long time, and so with Lloyd. The reason I got involved was because where I live at 295, there was an incident that happened in my building. One of my friends was doing her laundry, and there was some people doing their business in the laundry room. They were hiding their stuff behind the washers and dryers. So this for me is very hard because I have teenagers. And it was scary because my friend, while she was doing the laundry, while they were having fights, one of them got stabbed. My friend almost got killed. And I was babysitting her kids. We're all panicking because we didn't know what the hell was going on when she called me and saying, call 911. I went downstairs shitting, excuse my language, shitting my ass off because one of them threatened me. And that's when I called Barry, Julio, and it was on a Sunday. Police, we gather a meeting, and I started doing my tea parties in my building, reclaiming our space, because that's how bad it was. As a tenant rep, I started doing tea parties in 3 buildings once a week. I did it for 3 years myself, and it's very hard when you don't have the support of other members of your community. I used to have the superintendent of 51 Division come to my building, people from 981. I used to have the police come and security. So my tea party got so well known that we started doing it in other buildings in 407, but they didn't continue. Like I said, it was hard for me. I did it 3 years with the support of Barry and TCAC. For me, it's safety is a very important concern for a lot of us in this community. There's been a lot of activities going on, which sometimes it's our own youth that are committing all these activities. And we as a parent have to be open-minded, not be blinded in denial of what our kids are doing. Okay? I have teenagers, and I'm going through my shit too. And I'm not being a parent in denial, and I'm a tough parent with my kids. One hand I love them, but the other hand I have to be tough with them. But at the same time, we have to help each other. If we don't help each other, this is gonna get worse. So this is why I'm involved in the safety committee, to try to make it a better place for our kids and for us as a parent. So we need to work together It's not about bitching and complaining, but it's about working together. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Well, first I want to say thank you to all the residents that are involved. Police can't do anything alone. It has to be a common effort, and you have no idea how valuable you are for the safety of this neighborhood. Everybody who gets involved, no matter how much, how little. We had one time, and I hate to bring this up, but we had a shooting last year where a young man was shot several times in the middle of the night. And we had no one calling police until his wife came outside 5 minutes later while he was struggling, on the ground, for someone to call police, so we can give him, first aid and save his life. That's unacceptable. Obviously, we all part of this equation, and we all are doing our best. And the more tenants are getting involved, the better it's going to be overall for the entire neighborhood. For us to comprise in a few minutes, what we've been doing for the last 4 years is extremely difficult. But I can tell you that probably I had 7 years on the job when I started this program, and I thought I know how to be a police officer, and I know everything. But I knew nothing about Regent Park. Even now, after 4 years, I still have a lot to learn from each and every one of you. When you see, young children, wandering the streets, at probably 11 o'clock in the morning instead of being in school, and they're hungry, and you just probably not knowing their situation, is judging them. Well, you should be in school, but then where they live, the situation at home, how they're growing up. They're a victim of the society, of the entire situation. The children have no fault whatsoever, because they're all born innocent, right? They're just, the way we shape them, that's how we have them. And the more we get involved, the more social agencies and tenants and the police is getting involved, the more of these young souls are getting saved. What can I say? We had probably the most successful, and our boss is here to attest, neighborhood officer policing a program in the city. And why is that? Because we understood from the early stages of the program that it's very important to have a balance in what we're doing. After about a year of the program, we had a big meeting at the Humber College with the professors that implemented the program, and they all asked, the different officers from different divisions, what have you done in the last year? So we went from extremes of having officers who are only doing, flipping barbecues and playing with the kids, to others, who are doing only search warrants and going hardcore on, enforcement. But we found that it's extremely important to have a balance in our work, to be there for the kids, and as a role model, as a father figure sometimes, but at the same time when a building is crying for help because they're being victimized by one person, we can go and solve that problem. When people are crying, that there's shootings, we increase our patrol and we try to change our hours and then be present in the area. It's extremely difficult to do all this on our own. It's only two of us working, and obviously the needs of the community are high. And the more people know us, the more they call us and demand our presence. And we're trying to do it, but it's just, we don't have 24 hours in a day, to spend here. We're lucky now that we have the work cell phones, and we get more calls even off duty, and we're able to solve, some of the crimes that are happening off our hours when we're working by passing on to the officers on duty. But this is, I think, it's a pretty successful story, and I hope it's going to keep on going. I don't know for how long, but definitely Regent Park needs this kind of policing, long-term officers, and the relationship that's being built. And thank you very much to everybody for having us for the last 4 years, and we'll see what's going to happen from now on.
All right, Bob. So quickly, three things, I guess, There's the first thing about how I'm addressing community safety is the kind of nuts and bolts things. In recent months, for example, in North Regent, we've upgraded the door entry system. We've upgraded and increased the number of cameras that view the inside of buildings and the exterior grounds. We've recently repaired, upgraded, and all of the lighting across North Regent, and we've also gone in and done a lot of tree trimming in order to improve sight lines and light penetration. So that's the first kind of nuts and bolts things that we do. Second way that we try to address community safety is when we hear from you, from our neighbors and our residents, that there are households that are causing some kind of safety concern or an unpleasant environment for the rest of you. We call them in and we meet with them. We see if there's some way that we can bring some kind of resource to get them to help with their family and their child raising challenges or whatever their challenges may be. So we have a whole section of our company that helps to do that, that focuses on helping people and bringing community resources to bear. The third way that we assist is if those kinds of results don't bear fruit, then we have to identify that there are serious breaches to our landlord-tenant relationship, and we take legal action and try and move these people out of the community.
That's great. Do you want to say anything related to this?
Yeah.
Okay.
Of course I do. So when I first got here, a tenant who got relocated, who I ran into recently, used to go to work at about 5:45 in the morning, and she'd walk along Gerard, and there was a police officer who was always there. And she came to me and she said, I walk by him every morning and he doesn't greet me. I look at him and he doesn't greet me. And I thought, well, that's strange. So I came to work early and found out who he was. And he said, well, you know, I don't even see her. I was so busy because it's the end of my shift and I'm sitting here doing my notes. And that's how miscommunication develops. So I said to him, well, come do your notes, but when the lady comes by, say hello, smile at her. And 2 weeks later she came by and said, he says hello to me every morning. All right? So this is how communication and how unintentional behavior becomes misconstrued, and the next thing you're dealing with a wide rift in not understanding. So fast forward from that, the community policing unit is operating. Farzad and Merche are on the job for about 2.5 years. A nasty incident occurs. People knew who the shooter was and who the victim was. Everything was known. Nobody wanted to talk to the police. They only wanted to talk to Farzad or Merche. They were off duty. And the mother of the perpetrator said that I know where my son is and he needs to be taken in. But there's only 2 people I trust enough to take him in. They came in off shift and had to get permission from the unit commander to go and effect the arrest, and it was a clean arrest. So when you have that kind of relationship, all of a sudden the trust allows a mother to say, those guys I can trust because they've talked to me, they've spoken to me, and we can now do something to get this situation resolved. And the last thing I want to say is that this is probably one of the most complex, diverse communities in the city. In another life, I did a lot of race relations, and we never had any, like the B'nai B'rith, March 21st stuff, and December 10th, we do another count. We never had race incidents in Regent Park. Everywhere else, there would be race incidents. And you know why we didn't have race incidents in Regent Park? Because the gangs were integrated already, right? Now, we talk about not just demographic diversity that we have the privilege of living in. It's now also the class diversity that's coming in. So to the new condo owners, be cognizant of that, because if we are going to move forward and truly have a healthy, complicated and complex, diverse community, it has to be with the Regent Park residents who are returning and the new residents who are building into this place, and moving forward with each one arm in arm, with the police, with the community, with the condo owners, and moving this, I'm very proud from the TCHE perspective that we only still, correct me if I'm wrong, had one violent incident in the new buildings since the first building was open. So we have done something right, but it needs maintenance, people. It needs maintenance.
So I'm just going to have one more question, but it's going to be an open question, so anyone, feels compelled to answer. You don't need to all answer if you feel that someone already said the same thing. Essentially, what would you say are the major challenges and concerns and how around safety, and how do you think we can address these concerns now and better address them in the future? So what are the major concerns? How are they being addressed now, and how can we address them better in the future? So that's the question.
I have the mic.
So,
and then I'll just shut up. But the youth issues are still huge challenges. And from the new immigrant communities, like myself, I'm originally from South Africa. When I first got here in 1975, if I ever thought that I would be sitting down breaking bread, never mind having deep relationships with police officers who shot at me in South Africa in those days, that was not something I could comprehend. That is still a reality for new communities coming in now. Understand that. We come from places in the world where police are instruments of oppression. In Toronto, the police is not an instrument of oppression. It's a hard thing to understand for new immigrants. And then layer it with young children who get into young children troubles. And then with that diverse background mixed in it, we have a police force now that is as diverse as the community they police. Trust them, help understand them, and help. Listen, young people are going to be young people. They're going to screw up. That's the nature of being young. We need to understand that. They need to live and learn and make mistakes, but we need, as the adults, to understand the complexity of the environment they live in and bring them back to the right path. The police needs to be there to help us.
I think Barry said it really best, and we have a lot of challenges, and youth is definitely one of them, because we all share the same common denominator, and it's always going to be a challenge. But I'm just going to focus on one of the challenges that we're facing now. If this was a couple of years ago, I'd be saying, oh, our challenge is still going to be how to work with you guys and be a good partnership together. But now we fast forwarded, now we are good partners together. The way we see it from our side, from the police side, from Mircha and myself, the way we see it is that our biggest challenge is how do we continue this relationship moving forward? Because we may not always be in this position here, and our bosses were not always going to be in the same position. They're going to get new people, and we don't want to lose this connection with the community. And not only we don't want to lose this connection with the community, we also want to make sure that, like Mircha said, there's only the two of us. I mean, could you just imagine if there was like a team of 10 of us right here in Regent Park, how much better it would be? It would be 100 times better, because we can all work together and solve a lot of those issues. But realistically, at this moment, we're obviously facing a lot of resource issues. But at the very least, we don't want to lose this connection that we worked so hard for the last 4+ years, and to restart all over again, and to have that consistency, because it truly comes down to consistency. Because if we don't have that, we're not going to make progression anymore, and it's just going to restart all over again. So that's the challenge that we're seeing right now, and you know, we're just kind of looking at a broad overview, and we're hoping that, you know, with your support, because essentially you guys are our bosses. You know, we have our bosses at the station; they tell us what to do. Yes, very important, but you're the bigger boss, and your voices are very, very important in the community. And if you want this program to continue, if you want this relationship to continue, then you should be voicing out to us, and that way that can get translated. Because just coming from Mircea and myself isn't really going to translate as well as you guys will, because you guys are the real voice, and you guys are the ones who are living this on a daily basis, right? And you guys can actually help us with this challenge that we're facing. So we want that consistency to continue and not to lose and grow eventually.
Can I ask a really small question? Do you guys sign on for a particular number of years? And how does that work?
No, actually, so just like what Mircea was saying, he was one of the originals here, and the program, when it was initiated, there was no exact mandate in how long we're going to be involved. They were basically studying us at the start just to see what we're going to gather, how we're going to be able to grow in this. And through the last few years, we've had a number of studies done by Humboldt College, and we've collectively come and we gave our feedback as well, along with the community too. They did a survey and they said, you know, in order for this program to be successful, you know, you need consistency for at least 5 years, you know, just to be able to make those connections and then start to make some progress. But even because every community is different, right? It's throughout the whole city. Like Barry was saying, you know, such a diverse community all across Toronto. Every community has its own challenge and its own dynamic. So, but in all honesty, there was no real number. But as we're going along and we're finding out, is that, you know, it took us about just 3 years just to build those relationships, and then to make progress and come up with solutions and answers. It's going to take 5+ years to be able to do that, and we have to be dedicated as officers ourselves, because there may be some officers that this may not be their cup of tea, right? So it has to be the right characteristics that have to be involved here, that want to do the work. It's non-statistical. We don't have any stats to show. Our stats is actually you guys, your feedback. So we rely on you to talk back and say, what are we doing right and what are we doing wrong, and what can we do to do better? So essentially it comes down to you guys to help us out here.
Anyone else? Sean, did you want to address that question?
Sure. I think just from the research that we've done and the people that we've talked to through our group, a lot of what the youth workers have been saying is that there's of course the sort of immediate response that needs to happen, but the prevention is one of the things that really needs to happen too, and that they're recognizing that we need to start connecting with youth at a much younger age, from 10 to 11, 12, 13. And the other piece that the youth workers, just to share some of what they've said, is that they feel that they need that support to be doing that one-on-one individual kind of work with youth, which they're doing right now, but they're doing it in a way that is very much off their table. They don't have necessarily the great support to do that work, and the trust to go out there and do that work. And so that's something that we need to work on, is to support our youth workers to be able to be trusted to go out into the community, and that not everything is just looked from a risk mitigation place, but how we have relationships with people. I also want to give an opportunity if there's any points that you guys had.
I think, like Barry was saying regarding about calling the police when it's there's an emergency with you guys. The problem is not calling the police. The problem is when you call the police and they show up at your doorstep and you say, "Don't come to my house," and they come to your door. That's the scary thing when something like that happens and people are looking to see who is snitching. So that right there, it is a scary situation as a parent when you see something you want to talk And like you said, if you have that trust with the police, it's a whole different ballgame. But if you don't know the other end who you're talking to, it's a whole different thing, right? And if you want to call, for example, Bija and Marcia, and they're busy, you can't talk to them, you can't call them, right? So that's the biggest fear what parents have here. And if you're going to say, okay, well, I know what happened, and you have youth, and that youth could be doing probably some trouble too, and then what's going to happen? They're going to go after your youth. I'm sorry, that's the reality. It's been here for so long, this thing that's been going on here in the community. This is why parents don't call, because it's that fear. And we're slowly building that relationship with the police. I mean, especially with the ones that have been living here for a very long time, it's hard of seeing all those things that has been happening. Kids, 4 kids walking with a hoodie and their pants down. Hey you, where are you going? What are you doing? You know what I mean? It's not because they're doing bad or it's just the way it's asked. I just had a couple of weeks ago, I had some kids saying, well, Mom, the kids are saying, they call me Mom. They go, Mom, I had a couple of officers stopping us and asking us, where are we going in this? Why are they asking us that? You know what I mean? It's the trust and the fear. I'm one of them. I'm building my relationship because of what happened to me. I have my trust with you two and Ed and Melissa. I don't trust no other cops. You guys already heard what happened to me. An officer threatened me because of what happened. And I'm one of those, I don't keep my mouth shut, but at the end of the day, that cop intimidated me. And I was scared. So imagine how other parents feel of the community. Thank you.
So at this stage, we'd like to open up for any questions or feedback or concerns that you want. Just raise your hand. I want you to know that we do have a video camera where you were filming this panel. We hope to have it on RPTV so that people who aren't here could actually see and be here actually with us. So if you feel like you don't want to be on camera, just please let us know and we won't film you. So over here, and then the mic will be passed around.
Hi there. I'm Karen, and I live at Paintbox. I went through a terrible divorce, and I got some money, and I was born in Toronto, and I wanted to be a part of a change. And I could have made a lot more money going somewhere else, Milton, but I didn't, because I believe in change and goodness, and you have to invest. And frankly, the city has never invested. So they're looking for private investors. That's how I look at this. And Marlene is also a private investor in this community. And I'm white, but I also was a runaway 15-year-old pregnant teenager in Scarborough. So I get it. Bad news bears, foster care, blah, 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 all of it. But there are a couple things I need to ask. First of all, I thought there were going to be 3 police officers. Why are there 2 police officers? Because on the picture, there were 3.
Tell me, it's right behind you.
And I consciously stayed back because these are the neighborhood officers, and yes, I am the unit commander, but I am not out in the field, so I want them to be the center of focus. Okay?
Okay, so
We kept our promise.
One down. There you go. So I have gone to POAO conferences, which I'm sure that you attend, guns and gangs. And I have to tell you, I have never been afraid. I moved here in 2012, and I haven't been afraid until about a month and a half ago, where, well, not even, how long, 3 weeks, maybe 3 weeks ago, the young kid, and because I have friends who are probation officers, I asked them, was this like an indoctrination? And they said yes. So that kid, who was all in white, who put the gun to that that lovely man's head, the Muslim man who was on his cell phone. I don't know if you've seen it. It is terrifying. He did it, his buddy was watching, and the white is a signal. He's a virgin, and that was supposed to be his call, but he did shoot somebody 3 times. What the hell? That is terrifying to me. The reason that Regent Park was going to work was that we were separating these kids from their gangs, because you're a big leaguer here, but then you end up in Brampton or Scarborough or wherever the hell you are, and you're just one of a bunch of punks. You're nothing. You've lost your power. How is the power coming back? That is terrifying to me. So I also have been taking pictures and sending them to my friends who are probation officers. What's tagging and what are gangs? Most of it's tagging, not a big deal. Some are gangs. The crowns are gangs. And so I'm saying, like, why are they back? I thought we were getting rid of this, and it terrifies me. But I have to say, when I'm walking down the street, I would love to see a police officer that I knew, a beat cop. And I was so happy to see the police on the horses, and I asked if they had cards, because in different parts of the city, they actually have stats. They have cards. I don't know if you know about this. And the cards explain the horses, all the information about the horses and all of this stuff, and they give them to kids, and the kids start collecting these cards. And they talk to the police officers. They didn't know what I was talking about. So I'm thinking, you want to talk about not 10, not 9 and 10, you're talking 4 and 5. I'm an ECE. You want to get these kids? You don't wait till they're 10. Their 15, 16, 17-year-old brothers and cousins have tainted them by the time they're 10. You need to grab them when they're little tiny guys and girls, and they have to trust you. And so what I'm saying is, how do we make this happen? Because I don't know where the funding comes from. I don't know why we don't have more. I think we should have more if we want this to work. There are people that come from all over the place to look at this area. All sorts of countries come. How are you doing this? Is it going to work? And I want it to work. But we need the funding. And so what I'm asking is, I looked at my tax bill, $690 goes to policing, and $62 goes to children. So maybe if more went to the children, we wouldn't need the policing, just saying. But my point is that also I think that there has to be a visible connection for people in this area. We have a huge Muslim population. We have a lot of people who are terrified of police. I think that just seeing that word police intimidates me. I can't imagine if I came from somewhere else. Honestly, I can't. So what I'm saying is I think there has to be something in the middle. Maybe a community response team, something that is not so overt. And that's what I'm saying. So anyways, I don't know if that matters, but I really believe in this. I'm not saying I don't believe in it, but I think there are answers, but I think there has to be more of a dialogue. Nobody's ever asked me what I think. That's why I'm here.
So we have a couple of questions in that. One is about resources, and how do we get more resources to have more community police officers, or to keep the community police officers that we have here. So how can the community help in that way? And a great idea that maybe thought about in terms of stopping youth and having relationships with you, whether the police department's thought of like having Raptor tickets, and every time they talk to young people, they say, oh, here's a couple, can they make deals with Raptor tickets, or with the Raptors, and talk, so encourages people to talk to the police while they're on the beat, right? So those are two. What do you think? Let's hear it. Great question. So, answer.
Thank you for your questions. I don't know if my boss wants to answer this one, but I'll try to do my best.
Maybe Tony should. Come on, Tony.
Which one? Because
So one is about how can the community help?
Yeah, so there was one person that spoke to additional resources and having more police officers. But at the same time, we also heard that, you know, $600 and odd of the taxpayers goes to policing, and a very small amount goes to children and the child welfare support system.
Yeah,
So-
but Tony, this doesn't go to community policing. The 600 does not go to necessary community policing.
Oh, so is that we want to redirect the $600 taxes to community policing? Is that more specific? Because I'm a fundamental believer of the community neighborhood police officers program for the very reason that you've heard. And I think more emphasis that you will be seeing under my command, more emphasis being placed on having more neighborhood officers. And so, because that's where, quite frankly, we get the biggest bang for our money. So that's the answer for the first question. The second question was?
How can we do more partnerships with corporations and sports teams and everything?
Yeah.
Where
Yeah.
have some better strategies where young people can connect with police. So giving out raffle tickets.
Yeah, so part of that is us trying to get the message out, and I know the officer attempted to do it today, and we continuously try to do it, is to recognize that the promotion of public safety, the creation of vibrant neighborhoods is a joint responsibility. And there's a role for corporations to play, whether it's in fact donating tickets that would enhance us to make that link with the individuals we serve. But that's part of our narrative, is that we have to get that out there, that it is in fact a joint responsibility and there's a role for others to play. And we'll certainly welcome partnership, if it's in the form of basketball tickets or whatever, going to the opera, we certainly will welcome that.
Great. Thank you, Tony. There's a question over here, I think.
Oh, yeah.
So there's the mic.
Hi, guys. Thanks for coming. I heard two things. One was that you don't have enough resources, so there's not enough police officers. And the other was on the video when you said that community policing wasn't accepted in the rank and file, and there was just something on the news about it today, and it wasn't very good. So how can we as a community, since we are citizens, we deserve protection of our person, how do we as a community and as citizens get more resources for you and get the other guys who are thinking that community policing is not real policing, to get them on your side so that you know, you can be supported by both ends of the spectrum?
So I don't know if you actually pay attention to the video. Was saying that was in the beginning when nobody knew exactly what neighborhood policing is. When the concept started, you know, when they saw us, you know, patrolling only a certain neighborhood and not being tied to the radios, responding to radio calls, it took us a while, you know, until even for us to realize exactly what our role is going to be in this community, what we can do, you know, to make it work. So it's true, in the beginning we had officers in the station that didn't really understand the program, but that changed in the last couple of years. Now they see the value because the radio calls, you know, we are trying to take on ourselves, you know, and answer everything that's happening in this neighborhood. So that relieves the pressure on the frontline emergency responding officers. Now, the other question, how you can get those resources, that ties into the other lady's question about the resources. I can tell you right now, Toronto Police didn't hire anybody in the last 3 years. These years we started. Every year we're losing hundreds of officers and we're hiring 20. So we are extremely thin on resources, on number of officers working. And just having the command understand the value of this program and keeping us, even having less officers working in the city and, you know, dedicating officers to a certain neighborhood, that's huge because they can use us. There are always 20, 30 calls in pending in 51 Division. We're one of the busiest division in the city. And they can easily justify saying, you know what, I can't keep these guys in the community. I need them to answer radio calls because they're piling up, you know, guys are waiting, you know, just to get through a dispatcher for minutes, you know, there's emergencies, you know, I want them to do that. but they are understanding the value of the program, and they do keep us in this neighborhood to continue the relationship that we already built. So I think that's huge and speaks volumes. Obviously, you know, if the city would allocate more money to Toronto Police, but already, you know, I'm hearing, you know, people are paying too much for policing. Unfortunately, especially this kind of policing, you cannot do it with computers, you cannot do it with technology, you have to do it with human beings, with people working, right?
So if I can just interject there, just to bring some clarity to you, we recognize we are $1 billion organization. That's huge. There are so many emphasis, other areas that need equal emphasis from funding from the city, that we recognize that we have to do better. And you may know that we're going through a bit of a transition right now, where we're identifying how we can use that $1 billion worth of resources better and more efficiently. And that takes time. It takes also us divesting ourselves from doing some of the calls that traditionally we used to do and people have come to accept. And so trying to go through that process in becoming more efficient doesn't necessarily mean adding more resources. It may speak to better deployment of the resources that we have, and that's the exercise that we're going through right now. So yes, there's always that talk of more, and there may be that argument if we want to continue with the model that we currently have. But we're currently in the process of trying to identify efficiencies, trying to identify a new model that incorporates. Part of it is incorporating the neighborhood officer program. Part of it is joining partnerships with external agencies that are better equipped to do what we're doing. And that has to be the emphasis. Not necessarily throwing more resources at a model that probably isn't as effective in today's economy.
Glad to hear that.
My experience with policing has changed since I've lived in Canada. I came here when I was 15 years old, and the first night that my brother came, I have a twin brother, as most of you know. The first night that he came, he saw a crime happening across the street. We used to live in the 63 Bell Show, that long building, and we used to have a clear sight to the park in front of Nelson Mandela. And he saw there was a gunshot that happened that first night he came. And when he saw it, his first instinct was to call 911. However, my sisters lived here several years, have told them, you can't do that, right? There's the whole culture of snitching, stitching, right? So, but he couldn't understand it. He said there's someone who needs help there, right? Someone that a life could be saved by his intervention. However, fast forward 15 years, right? We went through high school here, we went to university here, and right now, our experience has changed. We've come to accept this culture of fearing the police, this culture of not calling the police. That has been the past 15 years of experience, right? So, that has changed with the neighborhood policing, right? And I can tell you for a fact, with my experience, we've sort of intervened in the center, the TV center. We came in, we wanted to do some programming there, and we were allowed to do programming there with the youth. And for the first time, we experienced a whole different type of policing, right? Edward and Melissa came to us and told us, let's work together. They came in weekly. We prepared workshops together. And for the first time, people were trying police vests, right? 12-year-olds, 13-year-olds, they were not scared of the police, right? They were excited about police, right? So that sort of changed our own experience with policing for the past few years you guys were doing your work. So we have to change a culture, right? And I agree with you, it starts with those young, very much impressionable people who are interacting with you daily, right? I see a different type of police when I go to young Matandas. They are very much intimidating, right? Because that's how they're trained. They have to clear the scene, they have to make sure that the people are protected, that they come with this intimidating tone, they're wearing this huge vest, right?
So that type of policing works in certain situations, but I think with young people who are very impressionable, we need your type of policing much more, right? I'm not saying don't do the other type of policing. I'm a both and, right? Not an either or, right? So I really appreciate more support for you guys in terms of the work you do, and let's continue to do that. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Alona Bada. I'm tenant rep for 220 Oak, and I've been tenant rep there for about 3, maybe 4 years. And I've been working to clean my building. I have a drug dealer that lives on my floor, and he lives there, you know, and he brings in all the people that shouldn't be there. Anyway, I used to be a drug addict. I'm going on 10 years clean in August. And I'm 4 years clean from alcohol. So I know where these people are coming from. I know how they feel, you know. But when I was using, I never robbed anybody. I never hurt anybody. The only person I was hurting was me. But I see these people, they come into our building and they hurt people. They rob the old people, they rob the disabled people. Just a week ago, somebody gets robbed, beat up so badly he's in the induced coma in the hospital, and they found him in his underwear. Okay? And these are the things I want to stop in my building. With their help, we've done a lot of cleaning up. It's not there yet, but I appreciate everyone that's on this panel right now, that they're there for me, and they're there for me, they listen to me. I thank God for them.
Bob. It seems funny just to say your name, but in my building, you just put in a new system, okay, to get into the 325 drawer. And this is a problem that's been going on for, even when Barry was here. I find that you put a system in that works, and all of a sudden, it's the residents that keep pushing the door open and allowing people to get into the building. I go and I shut the door, I come back down, it's back open again, and anybody can come in. I really would like to know what other things besides keep shutting the door and getting tired of it that you can do to help to make sure that the residents don't allow them to come in.
Well, there are a number of small things that might work towards a solution. One of them is that we could alarm a door in such a way that someone like on our CSU or a super gets a signal that the door has been jammed open for longer than a minute. So that's one thing that we could do. In the older buildings, we have bumped up the cameras. The ceilings are a little low, so they're very easy to sort of cover up and vandalize. But we can take a look at whether we've got enough sight, remote sight of that site to see who's doing it. I think the most effective thing is if we're able to identify who is living in the building, is doing this, then we approach them when we sit down and we talk with them and explain their effect on everybody else in the building, and we go from there. So if we can identify that, that might be the most effective way.
That's good. We have Pamela at the back.
Yeah, my name is Pamela, and I'm a resident at 252 Sackville Street. And our building houses a lot of people who were the originators of Regent Park. They were born in the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s. And a lot of them used to feel very lonely and isolated, that they didn't have a voice or they were not being heard. But since April of last year, our 2 police officers, Constable Biga and Gottby, came April, the Muslim Welfare Center started sending meals for the seniors, and our 2 police officers would go and talk to people, listen to their concerns, chat with them, and make sure they were okay. So we miss them because they've not been here for quite a few weeks, and people keep asking if you're coming back. So we hope you allow them to come back, because the seniors really miss them.
Thanks, man.
Hi, I'm from this nice new building up on the next street north of here. There's been a couple times where the police have been called, and like we've had some pretty serious things happen. We had a drug dealer who I knew fairly well on our floor, and I tried to just kind of discourage him from that. He had his unit taken over, and then he was assaulted and put in hospital. I'm not sure exactly what the situation is. It's all what's the term? It's called confidentiality. And we also had a big screen TV that was at least 5 foot wide, an older one that was in a common room, and they snuck in the middle of the night and they just walked off with it. But of course they had to use one of the tenants' fobs to get in, but they still took off with this thing, and we haven't had anything to replace it in like 3 months. But we don't know if these kind of things are going to keep happening. We have a security door to let come in, but just like everybody else, the security doors can be blocked. There's the door at the bottom of the steps. During the daytime, when there's office people 5 feet away from it, can be blocked open, and they won't do anything about it. All they got to do is maybe put a device on there that puts out a beeping sound if the contacts are broken. But some of these security situations just don't happen. And I'm just kind of concerned, what can we do about that? We've been trying to bring them up to the people running our building. We've been trying to bring it up to those of us who have contact workers from our agencies. I've been talking to our agencies about them, but nothing seems to change.
So just to address that, there's a lot of these concerns about building security, the doors. One thing that Merch and myself were both certified in doing safety audits for the buildings, so we've done so for some of the buildings, and we can address that in our reports, and we give that to the building management. And a lot of those safety audits that we put in the report, they do get addressed. So that's one tool that we could use. The other tool that we also use is that we encourage people in the buildings, regardless whether it's TCHC or it's a private building, we encourage having tenant safety meetings on a regular basis, not just like once a year, but regularly done, so that we stay on top of these kind of issues, and we have, we bring accountability to the property managers that are there on site, so it doesn't get lost in translation when it's been on their board for many months, and they kind of forget because other issues come up. So having these kind of tenant safety meetings is very important, and having us involved in it, right? So that brings that extra accountability for everybody to kind of work together towards those solutions.
So I got a quick question for you in terms of the management. So a tenant who lives in a building sees the activities happening and realizes that there's a drug dealer dealing in their apartment or maybe a couple doors down from them. What is the process for them to get the police involved? And if a drug dealer is charged, then is there a process for trying to remove that person or that tenant from the building? I don't know what the current That's for TCHC, in case you're wondering.
Yes, there is a way. It's a long, protracted, difficult process. We take it to the landlord-tenant board. There are a number of steps that we have to take in compiling evidence, demonstrating the negative impact on the community, and some of the parts of this that are difficult to handle is now that when we get to the landlord-tenant board, the defense of someone who's doing this is often, well, I have an addiction, and a lot of my behavior is a little out of my control, and you need to, I'm getting help now. At the 11th hour, everyone seems to be a convert to change and help, and you get there and they're getting help and they need another chance, and you need to accommodate this attempt to change their life. And the landlord-tenant board looks upon Toronto community housing as the housing of last resort, which it isn't and it shouldn't be. But often they're left in the position where they say, well, there seem to be grounds to move this person on, but where would they go? And we often are in a situation where we put in a lot of effort and a lot of time to work our way through the legal options, and we either don't get the ruling that we can enforce, or we've got so far down the road, we get a ruling that we can enforce, they walk down to the neighborhood legal clinic, and their legal advice is get a set aside because there was some step that might have been missed, and you start the process over. Or you appeal to a higher level of the courts on a human rights basis. It's really hard. And we're trying all the time. We're working to get better at what we do. We're working to get closer relationships with our neighborhood police. They're very helpful in trying to address these problems. But
yeah, just to comment on the same thing. You know, Bob explained very well what happens when we get to court. I want to talk about the part before we get to court. And we, like everybody else, rely on information from neighbors. What you need to be very clear about is our mandate as operating unit managers is to go after the perpetrator and not move the victim. Although it's very hard when the process is going to take 2 to 3 years to move them. Some of you, I'm looking around to make sure nobody is going to get blowback, and so I can talk about this one. 59 Oak. You remember that? Yes. That whole saga? A group from the south who were the old drug dealing groups ended up in 59 Oak as part of the new. I brought them in, I gave them the lecture, said, listen, it's a new start. They started dealing immediately. All right? That role was very good at that stage. By the time, 2.5, 3 years later, with gunshots, threats, YouTube videos to me saying, if you move us from the south side, we'll shoot you in the north side. We finally relocated them to Jane and Finch. And we relocated them very deliberately to Jane and Finch, because Jane and Finch gangs are not part of the Regent Park gangs. They're behaving up in Jane and Finch because they'll get shot if they don't behave, right? They come and visit here quietly sometimes, but so I'm talking about, from my end and from Bob's end, if a tenant wants to tell us about something like that that's going on, I will sit down and Bob will do the same thing and say, look, at some stage there has to be a witness in court. Do you want confidentiality? Or are you prepared to witness? If you don't want to witness, it's going to take a longer road. But if I'm going to give you confidentiality, I need to be able to prove that in order to maintain my credibility. Right? So there's those kinds of issues that go on. The other side of it is when we get to an actual eviction, like we've been on several times, we get told by the mayor, who said, you'll kick all the people out in 2015, it's still a city problem. What are we going to do with them? I say, listen, you told me to do my job. I did it. What happens to them is your problem, not mine. And then I get a slap on the back of my head for being insubordinate to the mayor. But that's life. But what I want to leave you on, because I'm, where we are right now in Regent Park, with the neighborhood policing, with the level of crime, with the level of reporting, it is critically important that the tenants speak and maintain moving forward about dropping the crime rate. Do whatever you do. As Inez said, we started out with her doing tea parties. You might need to be doing weekly walks now. If we still do the Wednesday evening, finish the Wednesday evening with the community walk. Just let people know this is your turf, right? Anybody's welcome to come to the Wednesday night meeting, but there's a level of respect and community and enjoyment that we determine over here. You don't come in here with your gunplay and stuff like that, because then our neighborhood police will deal with you. And they will go to those other cops who don't understand neighborhood policing and finish the job, because we're going to need them. But it's really, really important at this stage to continue the work that we've walked along together and keep it going. We need new people, we need fresh blood. Please keep walking. Bob, over to you. These guys won't be here for good. They will also do a transition. But you have to get bigger and you have to get bolder, because this is your home.
Hi, I'm Marlene. I'm a resident in the area. I belong to the RPNA, which I think is a really important and vital organization. This is your Regent Park Community Association. I want to comment on something you're saying here about what do we do when we have these people, and how do we, report to you or whatever. When I moved into this area, I called it Regent Park. Now I realize there's Regent Park North, there's Regent Park South, there's the market buildings, there's the TCHC buildings. Damn it, we're one people in this area. And I find it really, really divisive. And I know that I'm new, and this is an old culture, but we're changing, and we have an opportunity to think like one, and not be continually talking about Regent Park 1, Regent Park 2. And I know that TCHC holds events, and you'll find out that they're in North Regent Park. And people in the South worry about that. It's something that I wanted to talk to Sean about. But one of the reasons I'm saying is that you haven't cornered the market in Regent Park in terms of violence and drug dealing. And I'm in the paint box, and we've had the police break down a door because somebody recognized somebody on, what do you call that program? Crime Stoppers, smash down the door, take the guy away. That's when I was first here. Secondly, we have a floor in our building where we have a drug dealer who was running, we think, a prostitution ring. We had, this guy was making huge amounts of noise constantly. Finally, and we called the police, everything's toned down. We called them once when a really nasty party was happening, and they were dancing over a dead body on the floor. We're a market building. Don't think we're any different than you, okay? How do we deal with that, okay? That guy is still living there. Do you know how long we've been trying to get that person? He's an owner. He's an owner. How long we've been trying to get that person out of our building? It's enormously difficult. We have issued him letters from the lawyer. We've tried to put a lien on his apartment. It is exceedingly difficult to prove that anything's going on. So you say that you have issues of, you're worrying about the sad state of this drug dealer. Boo-hoo. Okay? Our people who are living next door and down the hall from him, who were terrified, because at one point they were threatened, won't call the police, won't stand up, okay? And they can't leave. They're owners. They can't just sell up and move. You know, we had one person in our building who actually sold up and left because she was afraid of this neighborhood. I personally thought she was an idiot, but however, she did. I have never felt afraid of this neighborhood. I've told this story a million times, and I know it's partly because of you guys, okay? In my old neighborhood, I never felt afraid. When I was young and I lived downtown walking barefoot up the street like every other hippie, I never felt afraid, okay? When I moved out to Scarborough in my parents' home, it was a fairly affluent neighborhood. It was quiet, there was no one around. I was terrified all the time. I left at 18 and got back to the city just as fast as I could. But I was walking with a friend of mine had gone to the TIFF to see something. It was like 11:30 at night, we're coming home. And she got off the King Street car before I did. And I got off at King Street and I walked north. This is last year. I'm walking north, I get to shoot her, I turn, I'm in my own head, I turn. And I'm about to start walking up Sackville. And all of a sudden I just stood. And I went, it is 11:30 at night. I'm a 71-year-old woman. And I'm walking in Regent Park and I've never felt the slightest fear. Ever, ever, ever. Okay? That's my Regent Park. It's not north and south. Okay? It's not Market. Don't look at me like I'm a Market person. You don't know what my life has been. Okay? You know? You don't know whether it's a struggle to live here or it's easy to live here. But we all have experiences that we share. And when we are members of RPNA, that everybody needs to belong to, it's not about Regent Park. We're not resourced by them. It's not the builder, okay? It's us working together. And we don't sit around the table saying, how much money do you make? We share our lives. You know, somehow we have to be able to work out this place to think that it is Regent Park. We all deal with the problems and we all take joy in the things that are working right. And what do they call these people who start sort of new things? I see us as people who are, what's the word I'm looking for? Like a voyager, you know? You're starting on a new thing. We are building our community. And many of you have seen the enormous changes that we have forced on the city, on TCHC, to recognize that our community will be built by us. And if it's crime prevention, we have to work together and put down our fear and work together to build this community that belongs to us.
Great. I promised you a last line, the last question will go, and then
Wait. Sorry, I just want to give a bit of a comment here. So I think like one of the things that that Marlene said, the talk about having a unified Regent Park, that's really, really important. The idea in this community has this community has had a long history of being unified, and we need to recognize that. And I think we also need to recognize that we're moving into a new community that also is going to have a long history. And I just want to recognize that part of this piece is about the stories that we tell and the narrative that we create. And you know, I'm going to say something that's maybe not as popular, is we have people who use drugs in this community, and we have to recognize that. And you know, part of that divisiveness too is that it's very easy to just think that one group is right and one group is wrong. And so we have to, in my mind, also recognize that it's not as simple as, you know, just creating this sort of dichotomy of, you know, you either are with us or against us. It's not that simple. Like I worry about when I start hearing those conversations. So I just put that out there because I've been listening and trying to hear some of the pieces, and I think it's really critical that we recognize that as much as possible, of course there are people who need to be held accountable to their actions. We need to bring everyone along in this journey of safety, because the person who is homeless and is using drugs is affected by safety as much as the person who is living in a condo and has like a home to go to, or someone who's living in TCH. So I think it's just critical that we also recognize how much our words and the stories we're telling affect what the responses are. And I would even say, going back to the earlier conversation where it was talked about how the police get $600 from my tax bill and children's services get $60. When we create that sort of us versus them situation, then it makes it so that we can't think that actually the police could work with children's services. It's not just that either we fund the police or we fund children's services. Yes, there might be things that we could save money on, but I just, when I hear the conversation kind of going that way, it's very easy to think about drug dealers in only one way, as an example. And I'm not saying that there are not drug dealers that we should get out of our buildings, but there are also people who are dealing drugs to survive. So I just want to put that out there.
It's a good reminder. Our diversity of the community.
Just a quick addition to what the lady was saying. When you're saying that the neighbors are afraid to call the police, and that applies to everybody else. The luxury of having us is that when they call us, it's not necessarily we're going to go and smash down that door and try to get in. We can talk to the people, try to find a solution, put them in contact with the right resources. And so that's why I think it's important people call us, so we go and talk to them, and necessarily it's going to be made public that, okay, this person called on his neighbor. We're a little bit better than that, so we know how to deal with these situations. But we can, obviously, if we know about it, we can probably sit down and then together find a solution to that problem. That's what we're always trying to say, working together, that's actually one good example, how we can find solutions.
Okay, so I have, I'm moving soon to my new building, so Bob, I'm going to start tea parties in the new building to get to know my new neighbors.
Yes.
And the other one is, at 295 and 365 Gerard in Parliament. What happens? Everybody has to move out of there by the end of October. You know that there's going to be a lot of activities going on in there. When is the building coming down? What is your strategy of keeping them outside of those empty units through those two buildings?
So everybody will be out by the end of October, and they're trying to condense that so that there aren't fewer and fewer people in a large building that would lead to very unsafe conditions. So we'll keep monitoring that. If we need to bring in security to ensure that it stays safe until the end of October, we certainly will. Come that time, when it's all out, it'll be all fenced off, boarded up, and it will have our people making sure, monitoring it so that the hoarding doesn't come down, people aren't in there. That'll be a constant, ongoing kind of playing, and it should be demolished fairly soon after that, fairly soon in the new year. We understand the need to get people out, and so unfortunately some people are being moved from those two buildings over to existing older buildings because we can't leave just a few people straggling. It would be unsafe.
But, security is not the security as you guys had excuse my language, those stupid securities you guys had before. They were just sitting there smoking and sleeping.
So that company has been, their contract has been terminated. There is a new security company that's G4S that we do have experience with and on an interim basis while they go through a formal tendering. And our people now are working through learning from these past mistakes in order to put a scope of work and the kind of resources that are required to have those people that we will rely on quite heavily function better. The other side of it, it's too easy just to blame them. There are lots of things that we did, I think minute things, the way we connect with them, the way they're able to use our resources like our cameras or the door monitoring devices, that we didn't put in place enough things for them to do the job effectively as well. So I think we're learning on both sides of that. It'd be, and what lies ahead will be better.
With that note, I'm afraid we're going to have to wrap up tonight, and I want to end that by thanking everyone here tonight who came out. I think it's really important that you had an opportunity to hear from both our officers, our TCHC reps, and yourselves, because I think we all agree that community safety is something that we all have to be involved in. So I want to thank you so much for coming out. I want to also say that we have a little feedback form, that if you have some time, please come to the back and fill out the feedback. It helps us to figure out how we did and what we need to do differently if we're going to do an event like this again. And also if you didn't have an opportunity to have a say, to be able to put that on the feedback form. So, and I want to end by thanking our guests tonight. All our guests. And don't forget, so the television series will be released tomorrow, so you can get it on YouTube, and we'll put it up shortly afterwards on the channel. So, thank you so much.